Hey everybody, and today we're going to be focusing on another tzeentch tutorial. For this, I have a burning chariot with a couple of screamers. I'm going to repaint this one, and up to see if you're ready for this one. So for this, we're going to start off with a base coat. Let's get started. For the base coat, we're going to start with a base coat of Contour Blue. So, open up the paint pot. So, let me just move this bit of plastic bit out of the way. Okay, so all we're going to do is we're going to start base coating. For this, take some Contour Blue out of the pot and put on the palette like so. Always thin down your paints, but not too much, because even though it's a base coat, you still want it at a nice consistency where it's not too thin. Okay, for this, onto the screamer. For this, all we're going to do is we're going to focus on the screamer. For this, on the top end, just base coat all over using Contour Blue. Don't worry if you hit the spines, or you can just do that in a minute, but I recommend doing the skin first. Repaint the whole thing. Base coat with Contour Blue. You may be wondering, why use Contour Blue? Well, even though they have a color named after them called Screamer Pink, it's actually their skin color, which is actually blue. Base coat everywhere on the eyes. And don't worry, you can just repaint the eyes after we're done. Alright, with the skin base coated, that's it. Okay, so now all we're going to do is basically, I'm just going to wash off my brush real quick. Where'd my thing go? Oh, here it is. Just drying off my brush. Okay. While we're waiting for that to dry, we're going to base coat the eyes. Let me close up my pot real quick. So, for focusing on the eyes, all we just need is one color. For this, let me just find it real quick. Oh, here it is. For the eyes, we're going to use a base coat of Avalon Sunset. So, okay, check out the paint pot. And we are going to need to transition to a smaller brush. Let me just make sure I find it. Sorry about that. Where is it? Oh, here it is. We're going to use a smaller brush. I'm going to use a 5-0. So all we're going to do, take some Avalon Sunset and put on the palette like so. So all we're going to do, we're not going to thin this down since the eyes are kind of detailed. So for this, we're going to paint in the eyes, everywhere where you see eyes. So right here. And tzeentch do have eyes on the bottom of their body, so don't forget to pick those out as well. Alright, that's the eyes base coated. Alright, now, for the eyes, that's pretty much it for right now. So, all we're going to do is we're going to start highlighting the screamer skin. Let me just make sure my paint is dry. Yes, it is. For this, we're going to use a wash. For this, you can use Dreckenhoff Nightshade, but since they have a darker color, we're going to use a different wash. For this, we're going to use Nolan Oil. This is the new Nolan Oil, but if you do have the older version, don't worry, you can just use that as well. Make sure I move some of my paint out of the way. Okay, so Nolan Oil here. We're not going to put this on the palette because we're just going to apply straight on. Make sure not to apply it too much on the brush. So for this right here, all we're going to do is going to go all over the skin, all over where you see the skin, literally all over where you see the skin. Okay, there we go. Alright, so we're going to do kind of an optional, actually no, not necessarily optional, but for this, while we're waiting for the wash to dry, we're going to go back on the eyes. You may notice we hit someone with the Nolan Oil. Don't worry, that's fine. So, all we're going to do is going to paint in the slitted pupils. For this, just use some Abaddon Black. We're not going to thin this down or put this on the palette because it's a very small detail. For this, we're going to slit the eyes. So they're kind of like a slit, kind of like a dog, kind of like a cat or a snake. So it is kind of difficult, but don't worry. So you go in the center, right, like right here, and then you go right here, right across the eye, right in front of the eye. And just do this on every single eye. Don't worry, just take your time and it'll be really worth the effect. Alright, that's the eyes done. Alright, now, we're going to do, not necessarily an optional step, but we're going to basically just start dry brushing. You'll be wondering why we're using a dry brush. Well, the reason why is so that the paint can actually help highlight the model. So for this, I do not have any light talk blue unless I do. No, okay, so I don't. Oh well. For this, we're going to use a different base, a different paint. Hopefully this will cover. Let me make sure this paint's still good. Yes, we're going to use Calgar blue. So we're going to take dry brushing, and I don't know if I ever demonstrated dry brushing on this channel yet, but let me explain. So, dry brushing is basically where you take a model and like you dry brush it, but I'm going to show you a different way. So for this, take a flat brush, some paint, you go right here and just wipe most of it off. Not for a dry brush, because watch this. Right here, we're going to go all the way around the model. See, it's catching the detail, but it's not making any streaks. You can go down the skin where it's more open, grab some more paint, and just continue doing the same thing. Alright, that's pretty much done. Now, all we need to do is going to highlight some of the fins. So for this, we're going to use the most palest thing possible that we can do for this color spectrum. For this, all we're going to use is Fenrisian Gray. So what we're going to do, take some out of the paint. Okay, now this paint comes pretty thin, so we're not going to thin it down at all. We're just going to make sure we don't have too much in our palette. For this, I'm going to grab my thin brush again. So for this, take some Fenrisian Gray and just put it on the palette like so. So all we're going to do is going to start highlighting from the very edges. So for right here, we're going to focus on the edge of the fins. Now, if you want to, you could, instead of Fenrisian Gray, you could use Rust Gray, but I prefer the Fenrisian Gray for an edge highlight because it really makes it stand out. And then repeat on the other side. So right here. And don't worry, if you hit it down, we're going to wipe that off. There we go. Alright, so that's pretty much it. But also with the Fenrisian Gray, we're going to highlight some other details. For this, we're going to need our bigger brush. Okay, so what we're going to do, take our bigger brush, take some Fenrisian Gray, put it on pot. Make sure we get most of this paint off the brush. A little more. So, all we're going to do is this. So, you just barely want to touch it. Don't worry if you make any mistakes like I just did. Just wipe it off a little bit. Okay. All right, there we go. All right, that concludes today's tutorial on tzeentch. But don't worry, I'll do a future video when we do like the teeth and the fangs. I really hope you enjoyed this paint tutorial on tzeentch. Bye bye.